Well, I am so excited because today is Project Glimmer's day of giving, which means give. Give. We are raising funds for foster youth. And, Project Glimmer has done such a good job supporting foster youth. And today we have the amazing Nkia Richardson, who is executive director of CASA, which is doing so much incredible work in the foster community. Just to kick it off, I think, Nkia, your work at CASA is so critical. But just to take it back and begin at the very beginning, because I found in a lot of communities, unfortunately, that I work in, unfortunately, they aren't super familiar with the foster care system at all. So, can you tell us a little about the foster care system and why it's so critical that we support these foster youth?
Absolutely, Jesse. It's great to be here with you today. I'm excited to have this conversation to talk about foster care and the ways that it touches all of us. It's part of all of our communities. So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and I run the program in San Mateo County in California. And we support young people who are in foster care, which means that the court has found that those young people from birth to anywhere from birth to 21 have experienced abuse or neglect or at risk of experiencing abuse or neglect. And so the court has taken jurisdiction, intervened. In many instances, the young people we support through mentoring or advocacy, some of them may still be at home with their parents, but many of them have been removed from their parents' care. So this is all due to tremendous trauma. These are young folks who need a lot of support to navigate that trauma. We're talking about some of the most vulnerable young people in our communities, young folks who, and rightfully so, but who it's not, the trauma that they've experienced isn't obvious to those of us who are, walking the halls at school with them or who are out in the community. So it's really important for us to have conversations like this to let people know just some of the challenges that are confronting young people in foster care.
Can you give a specific example of how CASA has impacted, someone's life significantly? Do you have a story you can share?
Sure. So our volunteers are paired one-on-one with young people to mentor them and advocate for them in court, in school, in the larger community. And that's because as young people navigate the child welfare system, there's just a lot of inconsistency. If you can imagine, if you are a young person who has to move out of your home and all that's familiar to you out of school, all of the changes that you encounter, whether it's changes in the social worker who's helping you and supporting you, changes to your home, your school. So our volunteers are there to be that consistent presence in a young person's life. And what that might look like is, for instance, one young person who we were supporting was acting out, was struggling academically. And as they were driving, they were in the car with the CASA volunteer who was supporting them. And the volunteer realized that they could see things that that young person couldn't see or couldn't see in the same way. And so the volunteer was able to explore and bring that to the attention of the court and the social worker and advocate for needed medical care, which in this case turned out to be that this young person needed surgery. Surgery that without which doctors said that young person would have lost their eyesight. So that's just one example of how forming a relationship, spending time with someone, getting to know what their needs are, can result in really life-changing impact.
That's amazing. And I mean, I think there's so much that I look at the foster care system and really like my foray into it was I'm a venture capitalist and I was investing in companies that were solving issues within the foster care system. We're invested in a company called Binti that was putting adoption online, and they're now the technology product in 400 social service agencies across the country. And I was really trying to learn a little more about what that looked like and what the foster care system is. And I started doing this kind of social experiment where, when I raise a fund, I pitch about 500 investors, and that's high net worth individuals. That's people who run institutions. And I started saying, while I was explaining some of the companies in our portfolio, I started saying, "Are you familiar with the foster care system?" And then I would just go silent. And not one of these individuals was familiar with the foster care system. And I was included in this in the beginning. And so, how, I think this is such a critical piece of society. I'm looking to solve childcare as a whole. And I look at foster care, we can't solve childcare until we solve foster care. From what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's 600,000 at any given time foster children in the United States foster care system. They actually don't know because it's always changing how many. And to me, it's a completely solvable problem. These kids need homes, they need support. But what I've learned is a lot of philanthropists put their money towards homelessness.
Mhm.
That's important, but it's because that's what they're seeing on the street. What I've learned by digging into the foster care system, and if you aren't familiar, there's this great book called Invisible Child. There's this other book called Till the End of June. I highly recommend reading those and learning a little about it. But, what I have learned is if we solve foster care as a whole and just have a better system, because no kids should be property of the government, and that's what these kids are. They really need our support. But if we solve that, we get 50% of the homeless off the street. And then also, in terms of incarceration, 70 to 80% of the incarcerated today went through our foster care system. So something's just totally broken. So organizations like CASA is really where people should be putting all of their money for these communities who are completely unfamiliar with foster care. How do we spread that awareness? What do you recommend to get the word out about it?
Well, it's interesting, and that's what I love about conversations like this, because I appreciate you calling this out. I think it's what's really important is for people to understand all the various ways that they can have an impact. They can use their time, they can use their funds, their treasure. I mean, this work takes funding. And so that's part of the reason why, we are here on this day of giving to encourage folks to contribute to Project Glimmer. But, folks can look at their own workplace and, look to where they need interns.
Mhm.
Bring interns in from the foster care system, because really what the kids that we support need are equitable access to the opportunities and the resources that we all want, that we all should want for every child in our community. So participating in Project Glimmer has impact or empower events where they have folks come in from various industries, talk about what they do, share information about career paths, provide feedback and guidance for all the things that we kind of take for granted for those of us who are a little further along in our career. But adulting takes work. And when you are someone without a support network, having access to those conversations and to that support is crucial. And I think that that's something that, everyday folks can do. They can join the board for an organization. They can become a CASA volunteer. And so, and in all of those ways, depending on what is the best fit for you, you can make sure that young people who are navigating the foster care system have the support that they need from, all sides of our community.
There's so many common misconceptions about foster care, I think, in general. And I'd be curious, what are some of those common misconceptions that you see pretty regularly and assumptions that are made? And, what would you say about that?
I think that a lot of the work that we do, in addition to the direct support that we provide, is to really balance honoring the stories of the young people we're serving and acknowledging the impact of the trauma they've experienced, with making sure that folks aren't lowering the expectations or dismissing the potential of young people simply because of their histories or circumstances that are beyond their control. When I think of misconceptions and ways that we can grow as a society, as a community, one of those is to operate from more of a growth mindset with young people. And I think that one of the ways that comes up for me, and one of the reasons why I've been a long time fan of Project Glimmer, is that a lot of the young people we support, they all have dreams and aspirations, right? Like as all young people do. And many of them see themselves as future social workers and counselors, and we need them in those fields because we need people with lived experience doing that work. We also need people with lived experience in foster care in every room, in every workplace. So I think part of that growth mindset is also making sure that we're opening up those opportunities and educating and sharing information with young people who are in foster care about all the possibilities and all the ways that they can contribute, and that the ways that their lived experience can be an asset as they, navigate life moving forward.
And as a reminder, we are here today because it is the day of giving. So you're learning so much here with Nkia about the foster care community and what foster care is and how we can support it. And Project Glimmer has multiple programs supporting this community of foster youth, which is so incredibly critical in society today for women of all ages. And Project Glimmer primarily works with women, but supporting foster youth, both male and female foster youth, is important. I'm just so proud of the work that Project Glimmer is doing. So, how have you seen Project Glimmer programs make a difference in these lives?
I've seen an impact in small and large ways. I mean, the way that I became introduced to Project Glimmer was because young people who are volunteers or serving would receive cosmetics or hygiene products that Project Glimmer had made available. And, people, they show up differently when they feel good about themselves and feel good about the way that they look. They feel like they can compete, that they are on equal footing with other people. So that seemingly small offering, had big ripple effects for the young people we're serving. I also have heard feedback from young people who attended Empower events that Project Glimmer put together, where young women were able to get practical and important guidance about from other women who are further along in their professional journeys. So, again, when young people are figuring out who they are, who they want to be, and how they fit into various settings, and when they're coming into those settings, and there's already a bit of a power imbalance. In part, I think there is just because of age. When you're a younger person and you're in a room with older people, people who are older than you are, there can be a power imbalance. And I think that there can also you also can feel that when you are perhaps coming from circumstances where you've lacked resources or you've lacked exposure. And so getting insight from folks who attend and put together the Project Glimmer events is a huge step in writing and correcting that imbalance.
Yeah, I've noticed personally also just the network. They don't have, you and I take our networks for granted, I think,
Yeah.
and you're saying they don't have exposure, and they just don't have connections like that. They didn't have a family who was able to, introduce them to someone who could give them an internship, or even like how to put their resume together, or how to, find that next job and what a job interview is. So I think those are such important programs that Project Glimmer offers. Yeah, so again, it is the day of giving.
It is.
We highly recommend giving to Project Glimmer to support foster youth and women in the foster care system. This is critical to society. It's critical. Like, this is a problem we really need to support and solve. And, as someone once said to me, foster youth is like, these are our children.
They
Like,
absolutely are.
our children. And this is our responsibility to take care of them. And, it's an important problem. So get involved, at least by giving on today.
Jesse, I'm curious, and while I have you here, through your lens in the private sector, as a venture capitalist, what would you say if folks were to ask you how businesses and corporations can contribute in a meaningful way to really have an impact in the lives of young people in foster care?
I think there's great organizations like CASA and Project Glimmer that they can partner with. I mean, I just did a program recently where um, we volunteered with foster youth, mostly teenagers, and we took them shopping at H&M, and it was an amazing day. And I think there are these misconceptions about foster youth just because you only hear like these stories about these children who are struggling significantly. And I actually had a completely different experience where I
Mhm.
got to take this 18-year-old girl shopping, which already I was really excited about because I have 3 boys and I feel like I lack the girl thing just in general. And I was like, we got to go shopping. I got to hang out with this cool girl. And like, she was so wonderful. And just like you said, she wanted to, I said, what are you studying? She was in college. She said, I want to be a sheriff, and she wanted to go into government and solve a lot of the problems there because of things she'd seen growing up. She referenced that she'd seen the cops in and out of her house pretty regularly, and she wanted to solve that problem. And I thought that was an amazing outlook on life from someone who'd been through like some pretty serious life challenges. And we really bonded. I had so much fun in some of these events. I mean, I've heard of stories where people are getting to know these children and then they inquire with their social services agent, and they end up adopting them down the road, and or just supporting them somehow and creating a relationship with them. Those are much longer relationships, but you can also just like dip your toe in and get to know these kids, give them some love, give them some guidance. I think in the private sector, to answer your question, I'm so excited about solving some of the technology issues on this. We have a really cool company called Hop Skip Drive that provides transportation for foster youth in 30 states. And these kids can't go to and from any opportunity they're given, or even school, without government paid for and provided transportation. And that just made me start thinking about how important it was to integrate them into more of society. I think you hear, these huge misconceptions that you probably hear every day, where there's only like bad foster parents who adopt, many, many children. And I do feel like our communities need to be thinking about getting more involved. But I actually met some really great foster parents. I think there's really good people in the foster care system. More involvement and more awareness is sort of what I realized, because I didn't know anything. And it was a true deep dive for me. And I'm really excited about investing in childcare. And I've realized it's such a critical piece of childcare. We can't invest in childcare actually until we create better solutions for the foster care system. So what you're doing, what Project Glimmer is doing, is so, so beautiful and important. And these are children. This is the future of our country. This is just the future of everything. So I don't know. I'm incredibly passionate about it. Obviously, I think about it every
I
day.
love it.
I want to get even more and more involved. Today is the
What?
day of giving. So you can get involved too.
Well, I love that you mentioned Skip Drive and your relationship to it, because I think it brings up, earlier I mentioned that, one way to support young folks in foster care would be to, offer internships, but it's also about acknowledging the type of support that young people may need on top of just offering them a job, right? And because you can't get to a job if you don't have transportation, you can't get to, to activities that kids have if they don't have transportation. And we see that a lot, right? Where we may have an opportunity for a young person to, have camp funded, but if we can't get them there, then, that
Yeah.
doesn't really go anywhere. So I love thinking about how to connect all of those dots and giving folks things to think about in terms of the ways that they can perhaps fill, maybe not all of the gaps, but individually, if we all come together and try and fill, certain ones as a collective, we
Yeah,
can move the needle. I appreciate it.
definitely. And I think we need both the for-profit investing and nonprofit to like help with the solutions here, but just
Yep.
getting involved and learning about this. It was mind-blowing to me how few people were familiar with the foster care system in our communities. And it really can make such change. I think we need to start thinking about those kids who we always should have been thinking about these kids who've been neglected. Not everyone has an easy situation growing up. And so, especially like it's below the age of 6 that I think most kids in this country are neglected or forgotten. Ideally, at 5 or 6, these kids can go to kind of like a public elementary school and have some sort of childcare. But I always sort of think about that 0 to 6. And if we can
Yeah,
start getting more and more involved in the foster care community, solving both the 0 to 6 and then those who are aging out, the teenagers, like they really need.
absolutely.
How do we keep them, going and get them careers and lean in? There's so much you can do. Definitely so many, like corporations can get involved. You can sponsor a day where you take them shopping or you get them gifts through Project Glimmer, or there's so many different things you can do. And it's a great opportunity to learn something new about just the systems in the United States. I'm always thinking, how can we fix them? How can we change them? And
I love it. The wheels are always turning.
no system's perfect, but
No, it's not.
CASA is doing a lot for the system.
Jesse, we are on the Project Glimmer board together, but I don't know if I've ever asked you what drew you to the board? What drew you to Project Glimmer?
Sonia Perkins has always been so motivated to just change things for women. And she definitely drew me to the board and got me involved and was probably one of the first people to pique my interest about the foster care community because of what she was doing with Project Glimmer. And that she realized that there were these young girls who, were teenagers and weren't getting gifts, of things like jewelry and hair dryers and just these things that young girls started, they start wanting. It's just, you're in middle school and you don't have these little things that make you so happy for a birthday or Christmas.
Mhm.
She did such a good job building building around that simple idea where first they were just giving gifts to these children, and now look, Project Glimmer has helped. They have the Empower Hours. They have so many other opportunities to get involved. So I think Sonia originally drew me there, got me interested. And then also just seeing, I try to empower women as a profession. It's what gets me up every day. We invest in
Yeah.
women. This is a way to invest in women too. This is a way to invest in really, really important women. So I encourage all of you to give today and get involved and come to Project Glimmer's events, get involved with their Empower Hour, get involved with they have this huge fundraiser event that's so fun and doing so much good, but just lean in and lean into CASA.
Thank you. This has been fantastic.
This is so fun. Well, we hope you will all give. I think this is a great conversation. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Project Glimmer. And we hope you give today. Project Glimmer's matching funds. They have a great donation that will be matching funds. So we need you to give so that we
A
can
great
actually
opportunity to make your
funds.
contribution go that much further. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.